All right, so if you're joining me on the live stream or if you're watching the replay, hopefully this is actually showing up for people. I am using, yeah, we are live. Awesome. I'm using streaming software for the first time so that I can have my picture here and slides behind me. So this is almost guaranteed to be technically challenging. For example, the streaming software has decided to latch onto one slide in my slideshow, whereas I I was going to share more slides with you than that. So the topic of tonight's live is functional grief versus healthy grief. And we're going to go through and we're going to watch this video of Billy Bob Thorton. If I can learn how to use the technology, that will be very helpful. Yeah. So we're going to watch this video of Billy Bob Thornton in just a second here. And the purpose of the video for me is that this is such a close match for me about how I dealt with grief, right? So I think in the clip that we're about to watch, you see a man who loves his brother who has passed and refuses to let the memory of his brother go, which I think is like, of course. And in honoring his brother, that has produced what he calls a melancholy in him that never goes away. And I think if we can look at this video, what we can see is a man who is really functional with his grief. His grief is he's metabolized it. He's coped with it. He's survived it. And I think a lot of us, this is really, for a lot of people, this is the best model of grief that the public is aware of, right? This was the best way of grieving that I knew how to do for a long time. And it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. This model of grief that we're going to get to go on a journey through with Billy Bob Thornton in this short clip. After we watch the clip, though, I want to stop and I want to share with you a different. I want to share with you a different perspective on what could be a different model in terms of how people grieve, right? So we'll go over what are models in the first place, why does it matter for grief, and then what is a model that might produce a, let's call it, healthier outcome. In mental health, we talk about what is a good outcome, right? So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Schwartz. I am the creator of the Resourceful Grief Journey. And my first introduction to grief work professionally was in inpatient mental health, where I worked as an ancillary therapist. So I was a part of a support team where I specialize in emotional regulation, helping people manage their emotions. And we would get people who were, hospitalized because of their grief. I've worked with clients who have had psychotic breaks from their grief, right? And what I want to share with you is the model of grief that allows people who are extremely challenged to be able to get really good outcomes that I used with clients, whether it was there or whether it was in our coaching program. And really my goal here is to shine a light on a target for you. Jeffrey Zeig is a psychologist I like a lot. And he says that Grief is like an arrow without a target, right? Others have said grief is love without anywhere to go. And what I really want to do is I want to help illuminate, I want to shine a light on what a target can be and offer some suggestions that can make perhaps one of the most challenging things that we ever deal with more resourceful, right? The name of the the model is the Resourceful Grief Model, right? We want you to be resourceful. So let's take a look. I'm going to offer some insights into this, and I think for me this really demonstrates the difference between what I was taught, what I inherited as my grief model, and it's functional. A lot of us function this way. We survive this way. We cope this way. And there's nothing wrong with it per se. In fact, there's something deeply beautiful about it. And then we're going to examine how the same things that make this so beautiful could actually empower us to have a much healthier outcome on the other side. So let's go ahead, and hopefully I don't technologically screw this up too bad. We'll see how this goes. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and play this.
My brother Jimmy, he was a young guy. In 1988, he died suddenly of a heart problem that they didn't know he had. He was 2 years younger than me. It changed everything. I've only had a couple of times in my life when I was carefree, like a period of a couple of years when I thought, you know what, I don't have really any responsibilities, I'm making enough money, I'm hanging out with my friends, I'm seeing these chicks here and those over there, whatever it was. For a couple of years I felt okay, which is very rare for me. And then he died, and I've never trusted happiness since.
So this is a really important point that we want to come back to. This is not just grief specific, but anytime, this is a very common way that we learn limiting beliefs. It's such a pop culture cliche way of saying this, but a limiting belief is when your nervous system links up. I was carefree, I was happy, then traumatic loss happens. Now the nervous system equates, unconsciously just decided that being happy and carefree isn't safe because now I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? We don't just do this in grief, we do this with all kinds of stuff. Somebody has gives a presentation when they're a kid and the class laughs at them, and then that person, now has associated an intense emotion in the body, and this links up in their brain. Oh, I can't be happy. I can't be carefree. If I'm carefree, if I'm happy, the shoe's gonna drop. Okay, so this isn't necessarily grief specific, but you will see this a lot in grief. That the trauma of the loss is so intense that you get these secondary responses that in and of themselves need or want to be transformed or healed so that a person can be carefree again, be happy again, right? And so a good reflection for you watching this is what, if anything, maybe it didn't, but what did I learn after the loss in terms of, is it okay for me to be happy? Is it okay for me to be at peace? I was working with a client recently who, since the loss of her husband, she has been on a constant, it's been 3 years, a constant heightened state of anxiety since then. She is constantly anxious, waiting for the rug to get swept out from underneath her. So in a lot of ways, sometimes when we're working through grief, really what we're working through is emotional regulation, depending on where we are in the process, and working through these unconscious, well, in this case, for Billy Bob Thornton, a very conscious belief system, right? Learning how to shift these attitudes that are embodied. Let's get back to the video.
I have to really force myself to think that things are going to be okay in terms of worrying about my family or myself or whatever, my friends, whatever. Yeah, I've never been the same since my brother died. There's a melancholy in me that never goes away. I'm 50% happy and 50% sad at any given moment. And the only advice I can give people for when you lose someone like that is you won't ever get over it. And the more you know that and embrace it, the better off you are. I don't want to forget my brother, and I don't want to forget what it felt like when he died, because he deserves it. That's how important he was to me. So if I have to suffer, and if I have to be sad for the rest of my life, and if I have to be lonely without him, without his particular thing, his sense of humor and what he brought to life, then that's the way I honor him. You know, I'll be sad and melancholy about that forever, and I know it, and I accept it, and I live with it.
Okay. There's a lot there. So he says, I haven't been the same. I have not been the same since I lost my brother. Fair. Of course, grief is going to change us. Like, a real loss is going to change us. You know, there's a video coming up later this week on the Lion King and grief, right? Surprisingly, the Lion King is such a good teacher on what grief can look like for us. How we can, you know, people talk about post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic growth. And there's moments in that movie where Simba, the main character, if you don't know The Lion King, go watch the original. But Simba's father, Mufasa, is killed by his uncle. And Simba's life changes. His life will never be the same now. And he can go in a couple of paths here. And for a while there, he goes down a pathway that is really not going to be, he's not going to be the Lion King we want him to be, that he's capable of being, right? But because it's a good movie, steeped in mythology and ritual, he finds, what's the name of that monkey? Rafiki? He's the guide, right? He finds the guide, and the guide shows him something to help take him into a different direction and then grow into the identity of the Lion King. He becomes king again, or becomes the king he was supposed to be. Grief is supposed to change us. There is probably no better teacher than grief. It is going to change us. The suggestion, the invitation, the hope, the wish, the prayer that I have for you is that you have an intention, that you educate yourself, that you learn in, number one, understanding what you're going through, understanding what grief is like, number one. And we'll do more videos on that. But also understanding what is a good outcome for someone on the other side of this. It's really hard to know. It's really hard to know if I'm going to be changed by something, okay, that is that catastrophic. It's really helpful to have a place to aim myself for. And that can be a guiding light for me when times are difficult. Okay, which is one of the reasons we're talking in this video is we're not going to be the same again when something like this happens. And can we bring some intention to it? If I know I'm not going to be the same, can I begin to set some intention about, okay, I know I'm not going to be the same, but what are the meanings? Who am I going to become on the other side of this? How am I going to relate to the grief? Because what most people don't know is you have a lot more choice in your nervous system about how you connect, maintain your relationship with the person you lost. We're going to listen to what I just said there. Connect and maintain the relationship with the person you lost. There's the paradox of grief is that there's more than one, but it's a double bind. A double bind is a fancy way of saying a dilemma, right? Damned if you do, damned if you don't. So the memory of my person causes me pain because when I think about them, I experience the loss of them. But if I don't think about them, I'm experiencing the loss of them. So you see, either I think about them and I feel pain, or I don't think about them and I feel pain. So it's a double bind. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. The resourceful grief perspective is to transcend that dilemma, go to a higher level of thinking. So if you think about what a paradox is, a paradox is something that says when this is true, this shouldn't be true. And if this is true, this shouldn't be true. But a paradox goes, well, this is true and that's true. So in order for that to happen, a new truth has to emerge. A higher order, a new paradigm has to emerge. Okay? Resourceful grief, the new paradigm of grief says, actually, what we want to learn to do is transform our relationship with the person that we lost from an external relationship, and we lose them on the outside. So we lose them in this 3D plane. But then to transform our relationship so it's internal, and we connect again and maintain the relationship. Now, this can be a challenge. This can definitely be a challenge at first, especially if, you've never done it before, right? How could you... Number one, you don't know that it's possible up until this point. Number two, you need some tools to help you buffer the intensity of the loss experience so that you can learn to transform it into a place of connection and presence. But this felt sense of connection and presence is the core of what creates a healthy outcome in grief for us. Okay. So anyway, back to Billy Bob Thornton here. He was telling us about his experience.
Like when he died, because he deserved. I don't want to forget. And the more you know that and embrace it, someone like that moment. And the only advice I can give people for when you lose someone or myself, or what, worry about my family or myself or what, my friends, whatever. Yeah, I've never been the same since my brother died. There's a melancholy in me that never goes away. I'm 50% happy and 50% sad at any given moment.
So this is not the time for me to say this, frankly. This is not the time for me to address this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm never this, I'm always that. I'm never this, I'm always that. Right? I'm never happy at any moment. I'm always 50% melancholy or 50% sad. These are called beliefs. One of the first things that it's my job to do, if I'm working, when I was working in inpatient and somebody who was depressed would, first of all, everybody who comes to inpatient thinks they're always depressed. They think they're always anxious. They think they're always whatever symptom they have. And it's not physiologically possible, period, full stop, end of story. It is not physically possible for the nervous system to be depressed all the time. It's not physically possible for the nervous system to be anxious all the time. Number one, if that were true, you wouldn't notice it. You wouldn't even know. Okay, think about your brain tunes out things that are constant. There's a hum of the refrigerator over there. My brain tunes it out because it's constant. It's always there. So my brain learns to delete it. There's a subtlety to the emotions that we have that you and I were not taught growing up, right? This is why part of when we talk about a good outcome, we have to increase our emotional IQ. This is where when I was creating the Resourceful Grief program, I started creating it as a toolkit for grief specifically. It's not enough. It's not enough. The reality of grief is that the reality of grief is that you need tools for grief. You need tools for emotional regulation. You need tools for belief change and attitude change. You need tools for changing automatic thoughts. You need tools for how you build a reality. You ready for that one? How you build why? Because when we grieve, our reality changes. That's grief. Grief is, this is real, this is my life, my whole world is different now. Reality itself has changed. And so that's why you get shock. That's why you get confusion, the brain fog. Because your brain is not really good at having a base reality and then all of a sudden it's just gone. Like the reality itself doesn't make sense anymore. So the program turned into adding tools because the reality is that like this thing that Billy Bob just said right here, I'm never happy. I'm always half this and half that. Anytime you catch yourself saying these things, they're true in our experience. I used to have panic attacks. I had panic attacks for like 7 years. Real fun, 10 out of 10, don't recommend. I do not recommend you do that. If you had asked me back then, when do you have panic attacks? All the time. I have panic attacks or I'm anxious all the time. I always feel anxious. And so I know that it feels that way. But one of the first things that we have to do if we're going to learn to regulate our emotions is we have to relate to them better. Like imagine if you had a child and the child acted out a lot and you told the child, you are always a bad kid. You're always a bad kid. You're not giving the child an opportunity to learn to be different. So we want to be really careful with how we language and relate to our grief, how we language and relate to our emotions. So rather than saying, I'm always this or I'm always that, it might be more powerful to say, it seems to me, up until this moment in my life, I've been quite melancholy. Even when I'm happy sometimes, I feel like I'm happy and sad. Up until now, right? And I can learn. I can learn to be happy. Now, the way our friend Billy Bob here is currently honoring his brother, the paradigm that he's in, to experience happiness or to be carefree again would be a betrayal of his brother in this paradigm. The way he's perceiving loyalty, love, would be a betrayal. So it's not just that he has these beliefs, but he actually has an unconscious commitment to be unhappy, or to not be as happy as he could be, to not be as carefree as he could be. And this is super common. This isn't him. We all do this sometimes in different ways, right? It's called, depending on what school of either coaching or therapy or whatever your background, some people call it a parts conflict. Some people call it unconscious commitment, right? Positive intention. This goes by a lot of labels in the spaces. So it's going to be, and this is actually the kind of the important thing. This is actually really the core, most important thing for you to get from this video is what he's about to say next. So let me just go ahead and hit play on this.
And the only advice I can give people for why I'm 50% happy and 50% sad at any given moment. And the only advice I can give people for when you lose someone like that is you won't ever get over it. And the more you know that and embrace it, the better off you are. I don't want to forget my brother.
Stop. Okay. That's huge. You won't ever get over it. What does it mean? What does that mean, get over it? First of all, anyone who would ever ask you to get over an important loss, they don't get it. When people tell you to get over it, it's because this is a grief illiterate culture. No one knows how to sit in uncomfortable emotions. And so they can't sit with their discomfort. That's why people say, get over it, move on, etc. That advice, get over it, move on, like if you look at that, that is the worst advice you could ever give somebody. Now, you know what's not getting over it, but is a healthy outcome? Having a good, rich quality of life, which you can do, but not by getting over it. You cannot create a good outcome by getting over it. And it's because of the very next thing he said. He said, I don't want to forget him. Do you see how he's equating getting over it means forgetting? We're back to the double bind. We're back to the dilemma. I think about him, I feel bad. I don't think about him, aka forget about him, right? Not a single person watching this, myself included, not a single person would ever in a million years agree to let go of the person that they love. And this is the challenge with the current grief models, or many of the grief models that are out there, is that they teach us how to survive the loss, cope with the loss, witness the loss, talk about it in grief group. We learn to do what our friend here, Billy Bob, has done, which is how to be functionally sad and melancholy, which if we keep watching, right? If we keep watching, he is honoring his brother. He is a warrior of love here. He's a warrior here because his nervous system doesn't have the choice to remember his brother in a different way. Okay?
And I don't want to forget what it felt like when he died, because he deserves it. That's how important he was to me. So if I have to suffer, and if I have to be sad for the rest of my life, and if I have to be lonely without him, without his particular thing, his sense of humor and what he brought to life, then that's the way I honor him.
Okay. So he's made the assumption, and it's a logical. I hope it's clear that I'm not beating up on this guy. This is what I did. This is what most of us do. If I have to be melancholy, if I have to be sad, if I have to without him ... right? Do you guys understand the do you understand the double bind that he's in? Do you understand this? That the way he's representing the person that he loves the most, this is like a classic example of the exact, like if you have resourceful grief, what we would call a good outcome, this is the best we could do without resourceful grief. He's remembering his brother's death. He's lost what's important to him in terms of his brother's special thing, his sense of humor, all that. And when I say it's the best of what we could do, it's the best because he's so strong and such a warrior that he's decided to be sad for the rest of his life. Now, in a moment, I'm going to offer you a different choice. I'm going to give you a different example of a different way of relating to loss that will produce massively different outcomes. And when I first went through this, and I'll share my experience with you, it was a night and day difference for me. Okay, so we'll go through that in just a second.
You know, I'll be sad and melancholy about that forever, and I know it, and I accept it, and I live with it. But I think it's okay. I think it's okay to have all those feelings. And as an artist, that's where a lot of your stuff comes from. You keep honoring those people forever by singing that song or writing that movie or doing that part in the movie or writing a book or whatever it is that has a sadness and a melancholy and a fear in it. Those are the things that keep them alive, whatever you put into your work or your family or your art.
Okay. Those are the things that keep them alive, right? So I want you to understand there is a core motivation happening here of keep them. These are the things that keep them alive. This is a core motivation. When he said, I don't want to forget my brother, right? Core motivation. What is his core motivation? Keep my brother alive. I want to keep remembering him. Now, that's the core desire in his nervous system. He wants to honor his brother. He wants to remember his brother. He wants to keep that relationship alive. Now, in our models of grief that we've inherited from our cultures, there isn't a way to do that, okay? Now, let me tell you how I first came to learn about a different way of doing this. When I was working at inpatient, one of the things, because I'm not a classical therapist, like I said, I was an ancillary therapist. So I worked with helping people regulate emotions, and I was very effective, highly requested. And the reason for that is because of this concept called models and modeling. What is models? What is modeling? We have models of everything. Okay, you have models of, well, I used to be a martial artist. Okay, so when I was training back in the day, the model that we were following was mental toughness. That was the model. The model was go in there, train the hard. You're going to push yourself really hard. If you're injured, you're going to train over it. And the idea behind that type of training is it makes you tough, which it does make you tough. Doesn't make you a lifelong athlete, though. Doesn't teach you how to recover well. Doesn't actually create high performance outside of just brute forcing, mentally gritting through it, which is valuable sometimes in a mental health not in a mental health context, in a martial arts context. But then, you zoom out and you look at, okay, here's this model. Now I look at Thai fighters, Muay Thai fighters. It's different martial art. And their thing is they spar light. They have really light sparring. It's very playful. It's not about hurting each other. It's not about beating each other up. And then when they go and they have actual competition, they fight full force. But what happens in this model is you get to train more because it's lighter. You get to learn more because you're not hurting each other. Different models, different results, right? Do you want mental toughness? Yes. Yes, you do. Okay? Do you want to be able to spend more time sparring so you can get better? Yes, you do. This model isn't necessarily right or wrong. This model isn't necessarily right or wrong. They're both useful in a certain context. Martial artists need to be mentally tough. Martial artists need a lot of time sparring. So both models have their place. Think about physics. Physics is a model of reality, right? There was Newtonian physics. That was Isaac Newton, right? An apple falls on Isaac Newton's head. He goes, why'd that happen? Comes up with theory of gravity, right? And Newtonian physics is the same physics we used to do the equations and stuff to have airplanes take off, to calculate projectiles, right? Newtonian physics works. We use Newtonian physics today. We use it. But then a guy named Albert Einstein comes along, and then you find out, like, whoa, Newtonian physics is not exactly true. It's a model, but it doesn't describe reality at this other level of analysis. If you look at it this way, actually, we have the theory of relativity. We have, a different thing. And now, actually, there's a new physics now that they just won the Nobel Prize for in 2022. Most people don't know about it. But even now, the paradigm of Albert Einstein's paradigm of physics, just another model, right? Now there's another model of physics. Models come with sets of beliefs, come with ways of working. And depending on the model, it's good for certain things. So when I came to mental health, I was looking for models that produced the best quality outcome for a client. And I was working with a client who she, was going through some really intense grief, traumatic loss of a child, and lots of therapy, been in therapy for years. And my normal tool bag wasn't working. I have a pretty good bag of tricks for clients, and it wasn't working. So I go home and I start looking for what are some good models for grief. And I find this guy named Steve Andreas. Steve is, sorry, just one sec. Steve is a really interesting guy. Steve was interested in client outcomes first as well, right? So in the same way where I'm looking for what produces the best client outcome, that was Steve's focus too. So he saved me a lot of effort. Thank you, Steve. Went around and interviewed people who had had really difficult losses. And then he looked at what kind of outcomes did they have. Now, the one that we see from our friend Billy Bob, this is the regular outcome that most of us have in grief. It's what I had, okay? But Steve found a different group of people who, when they would talk about the person that they lost, they would smile. They would say things like, he's still with me, she's still with me, I feel their presence, okay? And he interviewed them, and then what he found out was that they were doing something different on the inside than the rest of us. And it was this idea that they had learned to maintain the sense, the feeling of that person's presence. Okay, so if you think about what it's like to feel the felt presence of someone. I was recently visiting my mom for like a couple weeks actually, and I was hanging out, and I got so used to having her around that just being in that house, I had that sense of that felt presence. Like I know she's here. I have that feeling. And they have a dog there that I'm helping them train, and this dog, is my buddy, so he follows me around, and I'll be working on the laptop, and he'll be underneath my feet somewhere, and I just get that feeling of felt presence, like he's here. I know he's in the room. He's here. And in fact, even if I think about, what that's like, if I remember what it's like to be sitting there on the couch with my mom, I can get that sense. I can feel that sense of felt presence. Well, here's what's interesting is that our brains know how to maintain this, and it's essential for us actually to function, that you can feel a connection to someone who's in your life but not in the room. That's actually a prerequisite for being a human, right? So when a child goes off to school for the first time, they're separating from their parents. But in order for that to take place, the child has to have grown enough internally that the idea of mom or dad can remain inside them as they go to school. This is how children learn to become more and more adventurous. Like at first, kid can't be away from mom or dad, right? But then over time, they build trust that they're here, that they can feel the presence, they can have access to mom and dad. And that allows us to go off into the world, right? Well, in grief, what happens is very logically, very obviously, we let go of that felt presence. We stop connecting to the person internally. So in grief, what happens is we lose them on the outside and then we lose them on the inside. And that is where we have choice. We have a choice. So if you remember back in the video, Billy Bob is saying, I'm going to keep him alive. I'm going to remember him. Yes, exactly right. But if you're like me, Billy Bob, what I did before I learned what we teach in Resourceful Grief is I remembered the loss. I needed help. I needed training. I needed to learn this process so that I could connect in again and feel this sense of felt presence. So I'm reading about this thing that Steve Andreas did, where he studied people who could maintain this. And I read through the process. I tried on myself. I have many years in this space, so I can do some of these things on myself. And I did it with my cousin Will. So I think about Will, he's here. I have that sense of felt presence. But it wasn't like that at first. At first, when I found out about Will's death, it was the experience of gone, empty, void. A piece of me is not here. And so I'm learning this process, and I use it with Will, and I take that and I transform it into this place of felt presence. And and then I'm like, okay, this is healing. This is wholesome. This is how I want to remember Will. This is how I want to keep Will alive. I want to keep connecting to Will. I want to keep feeling his presence whenever I think about him. And I take it in with me to the inpatient where I'm working the next day. And again, I have this client who's been treatment resistant, complex grief, traumatic grief, all the labels. And we did the process. She connects in with her son again. Really big, deep breath. And, she said something to me. She goes, this whole time, I just didn't want to move on. I didn't want to keep living my life without him. I didn't want to have family dinners without him. I didn't want to do this or do that without him. And the core of her work, what really helped her, was you don't have to do it without them. You have to do it without them on the outside. I get that, and that's not fair, and that's not right, but that's what it is. But you can do it with them again on the inside. You can connect with them again on the inside. And this is where it gets really interesting. I had no idea this would happen, but fast forward, the neuroscience now confirms this is a healthier way for us to grieve. Now we know in the neuroscience that in neuroscience they call it continuing bonds, where the more you continue your relationship with the person, the better the outcomes are, okay? Now, in my experience, when people do continuing bonds work, they don't have a process for getting that felt presence. So the way we look at it is we say, learn the resourceful grief process, learn how to do felt presence, then continue the bonds. And then we want to add into that emotional regulation, how to change your beliefs, and we need to rethink through your future a little bit, because the reality is when we lose someone important to us, we lose our future with them too. So you need some tools about how to think through a future, how to plan your life. I know you're probably a very intelligent adult. You can plan, you can do all those things. It still helps to have some tools. And the other thing is identity. Identity, identity, identity. We, um, the self is an interesting thing. The self is an interesting thing. We are not just, you would be surprised how often I is we. You'd be surprised how often, I'm a Redskins fan, right? We Redskins fans is a part of my identity. We as a couple, we as a family is really I. And literally, if you look at the brain, if you have someone make I statements, for example, a part of the brain will light up. And then if you have them talk about someone they're emotionally close to, like a husband, etc., another part will light up that's like right next to the self. It's like the same real estate. So the people who are close to us are us. We are the people we're close to. Now, there's an element of that where there's enmeshment and codependence, and that's not necessarily as healthy as it could be. That's a different conversation. But there is a lens in which couples share identity in a way, and that can be very healthy. Okay? So we also have to rethink our identity as well. So this is, in order to get to, like, if you think about, okay, here's where most of us end up in grief, where I was when I first learned about this style of working. Here's what a good outcome is. And then how do you, what's in the gap? What's in between where most people end up and what a good outcome can be for you? What's in between there is a lot of tools and some guidance for you about how to do that. Now, I have a workshop called the Resourceful Grief Journey. You'll see the link in the section below. It's a $30 workshop, and the $30 workshop is there to teach you that felt presence method. Obviously, there's a lot of tools that will help you get from A to B, but the one that's going to help you the most, if we really build everything around this tool, is that felt presence. I suggest, I invite, I hope to see you on that workshop. And it's made such a difference for me when I think about my cousin Will. It's the way I process any loss now. It's just become a tool for me for life. And the difference it makes for my clients is drastic. I was on the other day with someone, and they find it so much more of a loving, honoring way to remember that person. And you feeling their presence again with you. It doesn't have to be a woo-woo spiritual thing at all, by the way. Can be if you're into that. Doesn't have to be. It's something our brains can do. And it's so bizarre, in a good way, to see how much this allows people's emotions to regulate, to calm down again, to feel there's this safety and this trust in knowing that I get to feel them again, connect with them again, even if it's on the inside. Is it as good as being on the outside? No, but it's still a lot better than not doing it. So the invitation to join the workshop is there. I'm going to be going live now. I'm debating how frequently. We have 2 more lives this week. The Lion King is the next live. The Lion King is an amazing teacher about grief. The Lion King, the movie, actually is the Resourceful Grief Journey. Really. I mean, it really is. They don't use the language of emotional regulation, but that it really is a phenomenal portrayal of, post-traumatic growth from something like grief. And then we'll be doing more lives coming up. And if you would like to attend the free training to learn the felt presence process, go ahead and click the link below. I hope to see you soon.